I got some Gucci bags, some Louis Vuitton wallets, some rare houseplants. What you want? What you want? What you looking for, bro? Wow, is that a Monstera Elbow? Yeah, you want? Wait, this is fake? It looks so amazing. It looks so real. I can't even tell the difference. I got top of the line quality when it comes to the plants on this street. How much is it? $300. 300 bucks? For a fake one? You just said it looks so real you couldn't even tell the difference. Well, I mean, yeah. You know how much a real one of these costs? Well, how long does the variegation last? Long enough for you to take a picture on Instagram and take some videos. Okay, how about 125, 250, 140, 225, 160, 200, and I'll even throw in a free Tribia. Deal, I'll take it. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. For those who's new, my name is Christian and I love plants. And for those of you guys who's been following me for a while, there's no secret that I've been buying a lot more of these uncommon or rare exotic looking plants, partly because I love plants and I feel like I'm ready to take them on. And second reason is because they have become a little bit more available here for me in Canada. These plants tend to be a lot more of your fancier philodendrons, anthuriums, monsteras, alocasias, which can cost a pretty penny. I was looking at my previous plant haul videos and I realized back then that I used to always share the prices of each of the plant I got, which I thought most of you guys appreciated, and lately I haven't been doing that. So in this video, I'm gonna share with you guys 10 plants I bought this year and exactly how much I paid for them. The point of this video isn't to flex my collection or how much money I spent on them, but primarily to kind of give you guys a base or a benchmark on how much some of these houseplants cost in case you are looking to get into the market and shopping around for some of these houseplants. And for those of you guys who bought some of these houseplants, I encourage you to contribute in the comments below and share exactly how much you paid for the plant, where you're located, and what size they were, because I do feel that the more transparency there is, the more it's helpful for the community, especially for someone who may be looking at buying some of these houseplants. So I want the comment section to be more of a conversation among all of us, not to price shame anyone, but really to kind of just help each other out and make sure that they have the right information when it comes to buying some of these houseplants. With that said, I always encourage you guys to buy responsibly, meaning only buying plants that you know you can care for and that you have the right growing condition, but more importantly, making sure that you are not going beyond your means. So if you have to prioritize over plants and feeding your kids, choose your plants. I'm just kidding, but seriously, I'm very fortunate and blessed enough to obviously acquire some of these plants, partly because of all of you guys for supporting this channel and supporting my crazy plant life. So again, thank you for that. But obviously not everyone is in the same boat as me. So always be mindful and make sure that you are not going beyond your means. So I'm gonna go through our 10 plants I selected. I'm gonna go from the cheapest to the most expensive, share exactly how much I paid for it when I got it, and whether I thought I paid fair market value or over market value, or maybe even under market value. And then kind of share my thoughts on the cost of these plants today, because obviously it has skyrocketed, especially as we went through this COVID stage. A few things to keep in mind before we get started. I live in Canada, so I'm gonna use Canadian dollars. It's gonna be before taxes or any shipping costs. Another thing to consider as well is I got all of these plants from a plant shop or nursery, meaning I did not import any of them, because obviously the pricing of these plants would be different if you were to import directly or get it from a nursery who spent a lot of time acclimating the plants and making sure that they are healthy before they release it to the market. So all of these plants were well rooted and obviously accessible here in my country. Now, to kind of determine the market value of some of these plants, unfortunately, there is no black book that exists out there for houseplants. So I will use price points based on what I've researched online and that's available here in North America. Everyone from, NSC Tropical, Steve's Leaves, to online sellers like Etsy, eBay, Facebook group, as well as obviously my local plant shops or nurseries here in Canada where I bought some of these houseplants. Enough of the jabbering, let's get started. I'll start with the first plant. It is the Synthapsis Tribia Moonlight. So I first got this plant back in April of this year, and it is in a 4-inch container. It still is in a 4-inch container, but when I first got it, it didn't have this many leaves. Obviously, it's grown quite a bit, but I paid $35 for this plant. And I thought it was a really good deal when I first saw it, and it was a good deal because obviously this plant wasn't as commonly available and it wasn't as popular yet within the community. That has obviously changed today. I think some of these plants can go for anywhere between like $40 to $100. It really depends on the size. I've had a friend who bought a 6-inch one, about 3 or 4 vines going at it for about $160 Canadian. Now, Facebook groups has these priced out between like $35 to $80. Another local plant seller has this around like $120 right now, $130 even for a 4-inch. Back in April, obviously I paid $35 and I thought that was a fair market deal, especially considering that this plant wasn't as popular or in demand. However, today, I don't think I would pay more than $60 for this plant for a 4-inch container. That's just me personally. And that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to the pricing of plants is even though it may be listed for a certain price point, it really does come down to how much you are willing to pay for that plant. Again, comment below and let me know if you have one of these and how much you paid for yours, where you're from, because that's going to factor into the pricing depending on obviously how accessible or available these houseplants are in your location. But yeah, a very, very beautiful plant, and really happy that I got this for 35 bucks. Now the next plant on our list is the Monstera Stanleyana Albos. So I got this plant around the summertime for about $60, and it was in a 4-inch container. And when I first got this plant, it only had about maybe 5 leaves, the bottom 5 here. Obviously it's grown quite a bit. It's a fast growing plant, beautiful plant, but I paid $60 for it. So I definitely think I got a really good deal considering that these plants were going online for about like $100, $125. There was a Facebook auction recently for about $150 for a similar size. I think Steve's Leaves had one for a 4-inch container for about $85 US, which is about $125 Canadian. So again, there's a wide range of prices, but they are definitely above the $80 to $100 mark for about a 4-inch size of a plant. So yeah, I got a good deal. It's a beautiful plant. How much would I pay for this plant today? I probably wouldn't pay more than maybe 80 bucks for a similar size, but again, it really does come down on where you're located, how much you're willing to pay, and really how badly do you want that plant in your collection. If this is a plant you want on your list, how much are you willing to pay for it? And for those of you guys who do have it, comment and let us know exactly how much you paid for it, because I am curious as well. You know, maybe I overpaid for mine, and this is exactly why I want to have a conversation in the comment section, is so that way we have a little bit more understanding of exactly how much do these plants really do cost and how much are people willing to pay for them. But yeah, so the next plant on our list is the Etherium Clarinetium. So I bought mine back in April, part of my first uncommon or rare houseplant haul, and it was in a 4-inch container. It had about 4 leaves, and you guys can see it right here, but I paid $95 for this plant back then. Today, I think I looked at that nursery where I got this plant from. They're selling it now for about $125 for a similar size. And then there's another local nursery here who imports plants, and they don't actually take time to acclimate it, so they just push it out to the market, and they were charging about $80 Canadian for a similar size. Obviously mine has grown quite a bit, and it's honestly one of the easiest Anthuriums, our fastest growing one I've had so far, and it's a really beautiful plant. But did I overpay back then? It's hard for me to say because back then I only had that one plant shop where I would buy a lot of these plants from. So for me, I didn't really have a lot of options or accessibility until later this year when I discovered a lot more plant shops or nurseries to shop from. But today there's also a lot more people wanting these plants, so which is why the pricing on an Etherium Clarinetium has also gone up. I think Facebook has a range of between $125 to $200 for a similar size. Etsy has anywhere between $90 to $250, but that also includes plants that you can just import directly. And I think NSC had one for about $200 US. That was probably a bigger Etherium Clarinetium. And then another Canadian seller is selling it for about like $170 in a 4-inch container. So again, the prices can vary quite a bit. Comment below and let me know how much you're willing to pay for an Etherium Clarinetium. If I didn't have this plant today and I really wanted it, how much will I be willing to pay for mine? I think no more than maybe $90 for like a 4-inch one, and only because there's a lot more sellers out there. So if you just spend time doing the work and you know you can be patient a bit, you'll find the right pricing for the plant you want. So yeah, that's just my thoughts and opinion on it, but I'm interested to read the comments and see what everyone else thinks. Next plant on our list is the Philodendron Florida Go. So this is actually one of my favorite philodendrons because they are so easy and very low maintenance to care for, and I love the shape of the leaves on this guy. But I got this over the summer and I paid about $145. And looking back, I think I slightly overpaid for the size it had. It obviously grew about 2 or 3 leaves since I got this because it is surprisingly a fast grower. There are a couple more local nursery here who's selling them today for about like $110. There's also another one selling it for about like $165, a little bit more leaves on it. That also is going to factor into the cost of some of these plants. And I think NSC Tropicals had like a 6-inch one for about $195 USD. So as I mentioned, I think I overpaid for this slightly when I first got it. You know, I think today the pricing and the cost of these Florida Ghosts are starting to drop slightly a bit. How much am I willing to pay for this plant today? I would say no more than probably $100 for this size, maybe $110, partly because there are a lot more sellers now who have the Florida Ghosts, and I am seeing the pricing on these plants slightly drop. So yeah, that's just my take on it, but again, I'm curious to find out what everyone else thinks. The next plant on our list is the Alocasia Dragon Scale. This is honestly one of my favorite houseplants right now. I love the texture on the leaves, the color on it, and I paid $160 for this over the summer, and back when I first got it, it was in in a 4-inch container, and it only had about 2 leaves and 1 new leaf that was just starting to grow. And I paid $160 for it, which I thought was a fair market value. However, that price point was actually on sale. The original price point of this plant from that shop was around like 230 bucks. And you know, if you were to ask me, did I pay fair market value? Yes, because obviously it was the sale price point. And I think that's what it should have been priced at, to be quite honest. Partly because, you know, I also looked into how much some of these plants cost if you were to import them. And they were around maybe like the $60, $70 USD. And factoring in obviously the time it takes, shipping and all of that, I get you want to mark up your plants. So maybe 180 at most I would pay for this plant today. But I know NSC had one for about 150 USD. I think Urban Tropics also had one for about 140 USD. Facebook group has these for about 120 to 180 Canadian right now, and I think another plant shop is also selling it for about 180 as well. So again, the pricing can vary. It all depends on seller, but it also depends on how much you're willing to pay for it. But nonetheless, it's a beautiful plant, and I'm happy that I have it in my collection. And again, back then I thought I paid reasonable for this one. So with that said, let me know what you guys think below. If you have one of these plants, how much you're willing to pay for it, or how much you actually paid for it if you already have one in your collection. Next plant on our list is the Monstera Elbow. So obviously this plant is one of the most popular and sought after houseplant today. Hence the reason why this plant is so freaking expensive right now. I got mine over the summer in July, and when I first got my plant, it was actually a mid cutting. It had the mid vine with roots on it, and it had a leaf from the old plant. It actually didn't even have this growth point that you guys see here, or these 2 new leaves. This obviously grew since I've had it, and I paid $270 for mine back then. Now, I think a friend of mine also bought a plant around the same time. Hers had already 2 leaves on it, and she paid about almost $450 for hers. So even the difference between the plant of what I paid for and hers, obviously the amount of leaves on it, whether it was a mid cut, bottom cut, or top cut, will also factor in the cost of these plants. The pricing today has changed. You know, a similar plant to what I got, which was a mid cut, rooted, and no growth point or no leaves yet, is around maybe like $375 right now. I think there was a rooted 1 leaf one on Facebook auction that went for about 525 bucks, and another one for like 550 or 570. So again, very, very crazy when it comes to the pricing of a Monstera Elbow. A local shop here in Canada has a variety of Monstera Elbows. Mid cut, top cut, small, medium, or large, and her pricing ranges between like $500 to $1,200. Again, it all depends on the size of the plant, but definitely curious what everyone paid for their Monstera Elbow if you already have one. And for those of you guys looking at buying one, how much are you willing to shell out for a Monstera Elbow? How much would I be willing to pay for a Monstera Elbow today? I think it all depends on obviously the size of it, whether it was a top or mid cut. I probably wouldn't get a mid cut again that doesn't even have like a new leaf or a vine already starting. I definitely want to make sure that there's already a vine going and there's maybe a couple leaves on it. And because I do want my Monstera to eventually have those splits and fenestration. And because I started off with this one as a rooted mid cutting, it's gonna take a while for it to develop a bit of more of those mature leaves. But you know, a plant that has a bit more growth on it, I would probably pay 500 bucks to be honest. But again, that's only if you really want this plant, which I think is somewhat of a fair price considering obviously the size of the plant I would get, because I have seen those available at some of the shops I even shop at. But yeah, so the next plant on our list is the Anthurium Queenium, or Queen Anthurium, and honestly, this is one of my favorite Anthuriums. It's so beautiful. And when I first got this plant, it was back in September of 2020. And it actually didn't even have this leaf yet. It only had this one, and the baby one. And you couldn't even tell whether it was gonna be a green form or a dark form because it was such a juvenile plant at that point. And obviously it looks like it's gonna be a green form with this newest leaf. But yeah, 270 bucks for it. Did I overpay? Did I underpay? You know, I think relative to what was available back then, I think it was probably fair market value. Although a couple weeks later after I bought mine, I saw another online shop sell one for about $200 or $195 for a similar size and similar look to what I got. So again, it really depends on how much you're willing to shell out, whether you have the patience to wait and do some research and shop around. But you know, given where these prices are at right now when it comes to the Queen, I think it was fair. And considering it obviously gave me a new leaf and it's a healthy plant, it's well rooted, I was really happy with the purchase because today a size like this with a leaf like this is about 500 bucks. Going for right now, I think NSC has one for about $600 USD. Facebook group, again, between the $400 to $600 mark. So crazy how the cost of the queen has definitely gone up, partly because it is very difficult to import Etheriums, to be honest, especially one that requires a lot of humidity like an Etherium Regali. So these guys are a little bit more fussier than maybe a Clarinetium. So there's a lot more effort and time it takes to obviously acclimate these plants. And again, very, very difficult to import these guys. I've heard horror stories of people importing them and then pretty much arriving dead, so they kind of need to start over. So but yeah, so this is the Etherium Regali. I'm curious to know if anyone out there has one and how much you guys paid for it, what size was it, and where you're located. But yeah, so the next plant on our list is the Etherium Regali. So this is actually one of my newest Anthurium. I got this maybe about a month ago, and it is so beautiful. So it had this leaf and this one. It's in a 6-inch container, and I paid $480 for this plant. I honestly think that's about fair market value given all the shops I was looking at the other day. A couple of the other online sellers were selling them for about 500 bucks, $475, $525, depending on obviously the size of it. And there was another smaller one that went on a list the other day for about like 400 bucks. But yeah, so it's a beautiful Etherium. I would say similar to the Regali. They're very challenging to obviously acclimate and import. So I can see why, there is a shortage when it comes to the Regali, because I don't see many of them often. I think NSC had one for about like $456 USD. So again, above the $500 mark. And yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful Etherium, but how much are you actually willing to pay for one? Obviously, this all depends on what's accessible in your area and where you're located. But I think I paid fair market value considering it wasn't as commonly or easy for me to find. And when they do come available, they get snatched up pretty quickly. But yeah, it's a beautiful Etherium, and I'm really happy it's in my collection. The last plant on our list is probably the most expensive plant I own today. It is the Monstera Escalado. So this is actually one of my newest Monsteras. I think I featured this in my last houseplant haul or the second last one, I can't remember. But I paid $650 for this plant, and it is a beautiful Monstera. I love obviously the huge leaves, and this is actually considered still a baby or a juvenile plant. So imagine this at its like mature form. It gets really massive. It's obviously a big brother to the Adansonii, and yeah, so when I was looking for this plant, I actually got offered one, very rare because they're very hard to find, and there was one seller who had only one, and I actually auctioned for it to try and enter the lottery, and I actually won. But they listed it for about $800, and then another local plant shop also had one for about 800 bucks. So at that point, even though that was my first option and it was presented to me, I said no, you know what, let me shop around some more. So I did some research. I emailed all the nurseries that I shopped at to ask, hey, do you have one coming soon, or is there one right now in your nursery? And one did get back to me and said, yes, we have one, and this is how much it costs. And for me, that was a win because it validated the fact that I did not overpay for this plant, that as long as I spend some time researching, asking around, that eventually, the plant that you want will probably meet the pricing you're willing to pay for. And at that point, I wasn't willing to pay $800 for it, but I was willing to pay $650 for this plant. So it is the most expensive plant I own right now. But I'm curious to find out if anyone out there bought a Monstera Escalado and how much you paid for yours and where you're located. Is this a plant that you want on your wish list or in your collection? But yeah, so those are the 10 plants I bought this year and how much I paid for them. The reality is they're not cheap. It costs a lot of money to own some of these houseplants. And again, I'm very fortunate and blessed, partly because of all of you guys, to be able to get some of these houseplants. So thank you so much for your continued support on my channel and my crazy plant life. As for my thoughts on where I think the houseplant market will head into as we get into 2021 and the years beyond, there's obviously a seasonality aspect of it. Here in North America, we're in the winter season. So the plants have been staying on the market for a little bit longer than usual. They're not disappearing right away as soon as they go online. But I do think some of the pricing on these houseplants are gonna start dropping. There's a few things to factor in there. As the world goes back to normal, with the vaccine coming out and people start to socialize and go about their days, what they used to enjoy, there might be a few people who enter the market and may leave the market when things get back to normal. So obviously the demand in houseplants will kind of drop. I do think there's a lot of big nurseries out there right now whose manufacturing manufacturing or creating a lot of these houseplants to be able to push out in the market. I think Costa Farms has a lot of Thai constitution Monsteras that they're working on right now that they're trying to get out in 2021. You know, a great example is the Alocasia Black Velvet. I think I paid like $65 for it, but 3 weeks later, my big box store had them for like 40 bucks. So again, there's a lot of that stuff that's happening as well. I also think there's a lot of sellers now today. A lot of people are importing plants, which obviously benefits all of us as a consumer, because again, the more options we have, the more we do our research, and the more you are willing to kind of create your own boundaries on how much you're willing to pay. I think eventually the pricing on these houseplants will drop. But again, these are just my thoughts, my own opinion. I'm curious to know what you guys think in the comments below. Other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.